This video contains images and content generated or assisted by artificial intelligence.
You need to grab your bags and move to economy now. This cabin is for priority passengers only. The flight attendant's voice wasn't just loud. It was trembling with a mix of disdain and authority, slicing through the hush of the first-class cabin. She was looming over a 18-year-old black girl who was quietly sipping sparkling water in seat 1A. The girl didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She simply checked her watch, tapped a message on her phone, and whispered, "You're making a mistake." 10 minutes later, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, terrified. A translucent black Gulfstream G700 had just physically blocked the runway. The airline wasn't just losing a passenger. They were about to lose everything. This is the story of how one assumption destroyed a career and how true power moves in silence. The Boeing 737-300ER sat idling at the gate at JFK International Airport, a massive beast of engineering preparing for the long haul to London Heathrow. Outside, the rain lashed against the fuselage, blurring the runway lights into streaks of neon and grey. Inside the first-class cabin, the atmosphere was hermetically sealed against the chaos. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and expensive leather. It was a sanctuary of silence, soft lighting, and the kind of aggressive comfort that costs $20,000 a ticket. In seat 1A, the most coveted suite on the plane, offering maximum privacy and a direct view of the cockpit approach, sat Maya Sterling. At 18 years old, Maya didn't look like the typical occupant of 1A. She wasn't a graying CEO in a bespoke suit, nor was she an eccentric celebrity hiding behind oversized sunglasses. She was wearing a vintage oversized hoodie from a niche Japanese streetwear brand that cost more than most people's rent charcoal cargo pants, and a pair of limited edition sneakers that were currently unlaced for comfort. Her noise-cancelling headphones were around her neck, and she was scrolling through a PDF on her tablet, a briefing for the board meeting she was attending in her father's stead. She was the picture of Gen Z calm. But to Linda Halloway, the chief purser of the flight, Maya was a glitch in the matrix. Linda had been flying for 25 years. She prided herself on her ability to read the room. She knew who belonged in first, who had been lucky enough to snag an upgrade, and who, in her biased estimation, was undoubtedly sitting in the wrong seat. She had watched Maya board with a frown that deepened with every step the girl took toward the front of the plane. When Maya had settled into 1A, Linda had waited, assuming the girl would realize her mistake and shuffle back to row 45. She didn't. Linda adjusted her scarf, plastered on her tightest, most professional smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes, and marched down the aisle. The heels of her shoes clicked rhythmically, a countdown to confrontation. "Excuse me, miss," Linda said, her voice pitched high enough to carry but low enough to sound polite. Maya looked up, sliding her tablet into sleep mode. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently filled with a mild confusion. "Yes." "I think there's been a bit of a mix-up with the boarding process," Linda said, clasping her hands in front of her. She gestured vaguely toward the economy section behind the heavy curtains. "The boarding passes for Group 1, and the general boarding groups often get scanned too quickly at the gate. You're in seat 1A. "I know," Maya said softly. "It's a great seat. I specifically requested it." Linda's smile twitched. "Honey, seat 1A is a full-fare, first-class suite. It's not an upgrade seat, and it's certainly not for standby." She dropped the honey like a lid weight, a subtle diminutive designed to put Maya in her place as a child. "I need to see your boarding pass again. The digital one." Maya didn't argue. She didn't roll her eyes or raise her voice. She simply unlocked her phone, opened the airline's app, and held it up. The screen clearly displayed Maya Sterling. Flight 109, Seat 1A. Priority Global Elite. Linda stared at the screen. The words were there, but her brain refused to process them. In her mind, the narrative was already written. This was a kid, a black teenager, likely using a screenshot of a fake pass or a parent's miles that had been flagged. Or maybe she had just snuck up here while the gate agents were distracted. There must be a system glitch, Linda said, straightening up. She didn't hand the phone back immediately. We have a VIP passenger, a sitting US senator who is waitlisted for this seat. His console in 2B is malfunctioning, and since this seat usually isn't booked by younger travelers, the system likely double-assigned it. The seat isn't double-assigned, Maya said, her voice remaining steady, though her heartbeat kicked up a notch. She knew this tone. She had heard it from shop clerks in Soho and security guards in high-rise lobbies. It was the tone of "you don't belong." I paid for this ticket, full fare, 2 weeks ago. Miss, please. Linda sighed, her patience eroding. I don't want to cause a scene. The senator is boarding in 3 minutes. I cannot have him sitting in a broken seat while a teenager occupies the primary suite. I'm going to have to ask you to gather your things. We have a lovely seat in Premium Economy Row 12. It has extra legroom. It's very nice. I don't want extra legroom in Row 12. Maya said, her fingers tightening slightly on her phone. I want the seat I paid for. If the senator's seat is broken, that is an airline issue, not a passenger issue. The cabin was filling up. A heavy-set man in a suit across the aisle in 1K was watching over the top of his Financial Times. He looked annoyed not at Linda, but at the disturbance Maya was allegedly causing. Linda leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Listen to me. This flight is fully booked. If you don't cooperate, I will have to classify this as non-compliance with crew instructions. That is a federal offense. Do you want to be arrested before we even take off? Over a seat. Maya looked at Linda. Really looked at her. She saw the lines of exhaustion around Linda's eyes, the bitterness set in the jaw, the absolute certainty that she was right and Maya was wrong. You're making a mistake, Maya said. It was a statement of fact, devoid of threat. The only mistake, Linda snapped, standing up to her full height, was the gate agent letting you through. Now move, or I call the marshal. The air in the first-class cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. The quiet luxury had been shattered. The man in 1K audibly sighed and rustled his paper, muttering something about kids these days and no respect. Maya didn't move. She sat deeper into the plush leather, anchoring herself. Call the marshal, then, she said. But before you do, you might want to check the passenger manifest one more time, specifically the notes section under my name. Linda laughed, a short, incredulous sound. I don't need to check the notes to know that Senator Claiborne is a Platinum Key member, and you are, well, you're holding up the flight. At that moment, the commotion at the front of the plane signaled the arrival of the VIP. Senator Claiborne was a man who took up space. Tall, silver-haired, with the polished, ruddy complexion of a man who spent his weekends on golf courses and his weekdays in steakhouses. He was flanked by a younger aide who looked stressed. What's the hold-up, Linda? Claiborne boomed his voice, carrying the practiced projection of a career politician. He knew the purser's name. He flew this route monthly. My aide tells me the screen in 2B is bust. I've got a briefing to watch. I need a working console. Linda spun around, her demeanor instantly shifting from aggressor to sycophant. Senator. So good to see you. I apologize for the delay. We were just clearing up a seating error. She shot a venomous look back at Maya. This passenger was just leaving. I'm not leaving, Maya said. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. She wasn't tall, but she had a presence that suddenly filled the small space between the seat and the aisle. I am a paying customer. Senator Claiborne, I understand your seat is broken, and I sympathize, but this is my seat. Claiborne blinked, looking at Maya, as if she were a piece of luggage that had fallen out of the overhead bin. He turned to Linda. Why is there a child in 1A? I thought we blocked this for the diplomatic corps. We did, sir. The system glitch, Linda stammered, then turned her fury back on Maya. Miss, I am done asking. Grab your bag. Linda reached out her hand, hovering over Maya's customized Louis Vuitton duffel bag, sitting on the ottoman. Do not touch my property, Maya said. Her voice was ice-cold now. She pulled her phone up and dialed a number. It wasn't a contact saved as Dad. It was saved as Operations, Priority Red. Linda scoffed. Who are you calling your parents? Tell them to come pick you up at the gate because you're getting off. Maya ignored her. The line connected. This is Maya Sterling. Authorization code Delta 9-4. I'm currently on flight 109 at JFK. I am being harassed by the crew and threatened with removal to accommodate a Senator Claiborne. I need an immediate intervene. She paused, listening. Yes, Chief Purser Linda Halloway. She is threatening federal arrest. Linda's face went a shade of pale, but she doubled down, fueled by the pressure of the senator watching her. Okay, that's it. You are disrupting the flight safety. Captain. She turned and flagged down the second officer, who had poked his head out of the cockpit to see what the noise was about. We have a non-compliant passenger refusing to vacate a seat assigned to a federal official. The intricate dance of airline hierarchy began to play out. The pilot, a man named Captain O'Malley, looked tired. He saw a senator, a man who could make calls that affected airline regulations, fuming in the aisle. He saw his chief purser, a veteran pointing an accusatory finger, and he saw a teenage girl in a hoodie. Bias is a shortcut the brain takes to avoid thinking, and Captain O'Malley was too tired to think. Miss, the captain said, his voice deep and authoritative. If the purser says you need to move, you need to move. We have a flight to catch. We can sort out the refund for the seat difference on the ground in London. But right now, you are delaying 300 people. I'm not delaying them, Maya said, her eyes locking onto the captain's. You are. By refusing to follow your own contract of carriage. Rule 24, Section C. A passenger cannot be involuntarily downgraded if they hold a confirmed revenue ticket and have checked in on time unless it is for safety or weight balance. This is neither. It's for the senator, Linda shouted, losing her composure. Is the senator a safety requirement? Maya asked. Enough, Senator Claiborne barked. I have a meeting with the G7 finance ministers in London tomorrow morning. Get this girl out of my seat, or I am calling the CEO of this airline personally. Maya lowered her phone. The person on the other end had given her the confirmation she needed. You won't need to call him Senator. He's already been notified. Linda grabbed the handle of Maya's bag and yanked it off the ottoman, dropping it into the aisle. Out! Now! Or security drags you out. Maya looked at her bag on the floor. It was a violation. A line crossed. She picked up the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and looked at Linda with a pity that was far worse than anger. You really should have checked the notes, Linda. Maya stepped out of the suite, moving past the senator, who smirked in triumph. She didn't head for economy. She walked to the aircraft door, which was still open. Where are you going? Linda demanded. Economy is that way. I'm not flying with you, Maya said, stepping onto the jet bridge. And neither is anyone else. She walked up the jet bridge, the cold, damp air of the terminal hitting her face. She didn't stop at the gate agent. She walked straight to the large floor-to-ceiling windows of the terminal waiting area where a crowd of passengers was watching the drama unfold. She put her phone to her ear again. "Dad?" "Yeah, I'm off. They kicked me out for Claiborne." "Yeah, he's in the seat." "No, I'm fine. Just do it." Down on the tarmac, the engines of Flight 109 began to spool up. Linda Halloway was settling the senator into seat 1A, with a glass of champagne, apologizing profusely. "She's gone, Senator. Just a spoiled brat," Linda soothed. "We'll be in the air in 10 minutes. But they wouldn't, because 5 miles away, descending through the cloud layer like a dark angel, was a Bombardier Global 7500. It was jet black, with a tail number that didn't end in standard letters, but in a gold-embossed insignia, Sterling. And it wasn't heading for the private aviation terminal. It was requesting an emergency landing. On the very runway, Flight 109 was taxiing toward. Senator Claiborne stretched his legs out the leather of seat 1A, creaking softly under the movement. He took a sip of the vintage Dom Perignon the flight attendant had poured for him the moment he sat down. It tasted like victory. He glanced out the window at the rain-slicked tarmac, watching the blurred lights of baggage carts and fuel trucks drift by as the massive Boeing 777 began its slow, lumbering pushback from the gate. "Finally," he muttered to his aide, who was squeezed into the jump seat nearby, looking pale. "People need to learn their place, Simon. You give an inch, they take a mile. That girl was testing us." "Yes, Senator," Simon murmured, though he kept glancing nervously at his phone. "Although, she seemed very calm. Did you catch her name?" "Who cares?" Claiborne waved a dismissive hand. "She's off the plane. We have a G7 meeting to get to." Up in the cockpit, the mood was less celebratory. Captain O'Malley was staring at the weather radar, frowning at a developing squall line. He was already 20 minutes behind schedule due to the seat dispute, and he hated flying fast to make up time. It burned fuel, and corporate was breathing down everyone's necks about efficiency. "Tower, this is Dynasty 109. Ready for taxi to runway 4. Left." O'Malley radioed, his voice rough with fatigue. For a long moment, there was only static. That was unusual. Kennedy Tower was usually sharp, snapping back instructions instantly. "Dynasty 109, hold position." The tower controller finally responded. The voice wasn't the usual rhythmic, bored drone of ATC. It sounded tight, stressed. "Hold position immediately on taxiway Bravo. Do not proceed." O'Malley glanced at his first officer. "Traffic." "Radar is clear," the first officer said, confused. "Nothing is crossing." O'Malley keyed the mic again. "Tower, Dynasty 109, holding. What's the delay?" "We are burning time here." "Dynasty 109, we have an incoming priority aircraft requesting immediate clearance to the apron. You are obstructing its path. You need to hold." "Obstructing?" O'Malley scoffed. "We're a 777 Heavy. We have right of way. Who is landing Air Force One?" Before the tower could answer, they saw it. It broke through the low cloud ceiling like a dark spear. It wasn't a standard white commercial jet, and it wasn't the typical beige or grey of a corporate charter. It was a Bombardier Global 7500, painted a matte, light-absorbing black from nose to tail. The only colour was a thin, violent strip of gold running along the fuselage, and the insignia on the tail a stylized lion holding a globe. It didn't circle. It didn't wait. It came in fast, the tires hitting the wet runway with a screech that O'Malley could almost feel through his own floorboards. "Jesus, that guy is coming in hot," the first officer whispered. But the jet didn't roll to the far end of the runway. It hit the reverse thrusters hard, slowing down rapidly. And then, shockingly, it turned off the runway onto taxiway Bravo, directly in front of the nose of Flight 109. The massive Boeing 787 was face-to-face with the sleek, predatory private jet. "Tower," O'Malley shouted. "That aircraft just cut us off. He's blocking the taxiway. Tell him to move." The black jet came to a complete stop. Its engines didn't shut down. They whined with a high-pitched idle that cut through the rain. It sat there 50 yards from the nose of the commercial airliner, an immovable obsidian wall. O'Malley slammed his hand on the console. "What is going on? Is this a hijacking?" The radio crackled again. But it wasn't the tower this time. It was a new voice, crisp, digitized, and terrifyingly calm. It was coming on the emergency frequency. "Dynasty 109, this is aircraft November Sierra 1. You are harboring stolen property and are in violation of contract. Shut down your engines." O'Malley froze. He looked out the windshield at the black jet. "Who is this?" "This is Adrian Sterling," the voice said. "And you have my daughter's seat, and my bag." Inside the cabin, the passengers were beginning to murmur. The plane had stopped abruptly, the engine spooling down to a low hum. Linda Halloway was in the forward galley, frantically trying to stow the champagne bottles that had rattled during the sudden break. She picked up the interphone to call the cockpit. "Captain, the passengers are getting restless. Why did we stop?" "Get in here, Linda," Captain O'Malley's voice barked over the line. "Now." Linda smoothed her skirt, composed herself, and opened the cockpit door. She expected to see a mechanical warning light or a weather report. Instead, she saw both pilots staring out the front windshield, their faces drained of color. "Look," O'Malley said, pointing. Linda looked. The black jet loomed in the rain, its navigation lights blinking rhythmically. It looked military. Dangerous. "What is that?" Linda asked. O'Malley said, turning his chair to face her, his eyes wide, with a dawning horror, "Is Adrian Sterling's private jet. Do you know who Adrian Sterling is, Linda?" Linda shook her head slowly. The name sounded familiar, like a brand she should know, but she couldn't place it. "No, is he a celebrity?" "He's the CEO of Sterling Aerospace." The first officer interjected, his voice trembling. "They own the leasing company that owns this plane. They also supply the avionics software for half the fleet. And they own the fuel logistics company for JFK. Linda's stomach dropped. It felt like the plane had suddenly plunged 10,000 feet. "The girl," she whispered. "Maya. Sterling." "You kicked Adrian Sterling's daughter off the plane," O'Malley said, his voice rising to a shout. "And you gave her seat to a senator who pays government rate. She was just a teenager," Linda stammered, her defensive walls crumbling. "She was wearing a hoodie. She didn't look like what?" O'Malley slammed his headset onto the dash. "Like she owned the plane, because she technically does." The cockpit radio blared again. "Dynasty 109, this is Tower. We have a situation red. Ground operations have been suspended in Sector 4. "Suspended," O'Malley grabbed the mic. "Why?" "Fuel trucks are being recalled," the tower replied. "And the tug drivers are walking off. We just got a call from Sterling Logistics. No Sterling fuel goes into Dynasty aircraft until further notice. Sir, you are dead in the water." At that moment, the sat phone on the center console rang. It was the direct line to the airline's operations center in Atlanta, the red phone that only rang during crashes or hijackings. O'Malley picked it up with a shaking hand. O'Malley. Captain. The voice on the other end was the airline's VP of operations. He was screaming. What in God's name is happening there? I just got a call from Adrian Sterling's legal team. They are initiating an immediate repossession clause on the 707 you are sitting in. They claim breach of contract due to discrimination and harassment of a primary shareholder. Did you deny transport to a board member? O'Malley looked at Linda. Linda backed away, hitting the door frame. I didn't know, Linda whispered, tears springing to her eyes. I didn't know. We didn't know she was a board member, O'Malley said into the phone, his voice weak. She's not just a board member, the VP screamed. She holds the proxy vote for the 15% stake her father holds in our airline. You just kicked your boss off the plane. O'Malley, fix it. Get her back on board. Beg if you have to. The line went dead. O'Malley took a deep breath. He turned to Linda. Open the main cabin door. But we're on the taxiway, Linda said. I don't care where we are, O'Malley roared. Open the door and bring the senator up here. Back in seat 1A. Senator Claiborne was annoyed. The plane wasn't moving. He tapped the call button repeatedly. When Linda didn't appear, he unbuckled and stormed toward the galley. He found the main cabin door open. The stairs hadn't been brought up because they were on a taxiway, but a black SUV with tinted windows was racing across the wet tarmac, ignoring all safety protocols, heading straight for the 777. It pulled up alongside the black jet and then drove over to the airliner. What is the meaning of this? Claiborne demanded, spotting Linda standing by the open jump seat, looking like she was about to faint. Why is the door open? It's freezing. Senator, Linda said, her voice shaking so hard she could barely articulate the words. I need you to get your things. What? I need you to get your things and vacate seat 1A immediately. Are you insane? Claiborne laughed a harsh barking sound. I am a United States senator. And the man blocking the runway owns the plane, Linda said, tears finally spilling over. And we just assaulted his daughter. Out on the tarmac, the door of the black SUV opened. Maya Sterling stepped out. She was still wearing her hoodie, but she had pulled the hood up against the rain. She stood by the nose wheel of the massive 777, looking up at the cockpit. Behind her, the door of the black Gulfstream opened. A man stepped out. Adrian Sterling. He was in his 50s, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than the senator's annual salary. He didn't have an umbrella. He didn't need one. He walked with a terrifying, silent energy toward his daughter, placed a hand on her shoulder, and then looked up at the plane. He didn't yell. He simply pointed at the cockpit and then made a cut-throat gesture. Kill the engines. Inside the cockpit, O'Malley saw the gesture. He reached up and flipped the fuel switches to off. The hum of the engines died. The lights in the cabin flickered and went to emergency backup. The silence that fell over the plane was absolute. Ladies and gentlemen, O'Malley said over the PA, his voice broken. This is the captain. We have been grounded. Please remain in your seats while we resolve a personnel issue. He looked at Linda. Go down there and take the senator with you. Me, the senator sputtered. I'm not going out in the rain. You're going, O'Malley said, standing up and towering over the politician. Because if you don't, that man down there is going to bankrupt this airline by morning, and I will personally ensure every news outlet in the country knows it was because you stole a teenager's seat. The silence on taxiway Bravo was unnatural. Usually an airport is a symphony of whining turbines, roaring takeoffs, and the heavy clatter of baggage carts. But here in the shadow of the stalled Boeing 707 and the blocking Gulf Stream, the world had shrunk to the sound of rain hitting aluminum and asphalt. A set of mobile air stairs, commandeered by a ground crew, wearing high-visibility vests emblazoned with the Sterling logo, rolled up to the open door of the 777. The airline's own ground crew hadn't even arrived yet. Sterling's people moved with military precision, bypassing union protocols and airport regulations. Because right now, the man in the black suit down on the wet tarmac was the regulation. Inside the plane, Linda Halloway stood by the open door, shivering. The cold dampness was seeping into her bones, but it was the terror that made her teeth chatter. Behind her, Senator Claiborne was red-faced, clutching his briefcase like a shield. "This is kidnapping," Claiborne hissed, though he made no move to return to his seat. "We are being held hostage on a taxiway. I will have the FAA shut this entire airport down." "Senator," Linda whispered, her voice brittle. "Please, just go down. If we don't resolve this, the captain says we might lose the aircraft entirely. I am not walking down there to be lectured by some corporate donor." "You're walking down there," a deep voice said from behind them. It was Captain O'Malley. He had come out of the cockpit, his hat in his hand, his face grey. "Get off my plane, Senator. You've done enough damage." Claiborne gaped at the pilot betrayal, warring with indignation, but O'Malley stepped forward effectively, crowding the senator toward the door. With a huff of supreme indignity, Claiborne stepped onto the wet metal platform of the airstairs. Linda followed her legs, feeling like lead. The descent was a slow, humiliating procession. The rain was heavier now, soaking Claiborne's expensive wool suit and ruining Linda's perfectly coiffed hair. Every step down took them closer to the two figures waiting by the landing gear of the Gulf Stream. Adrian Sterling stood motionless. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with eyes that looked like shattered glass. He held an umbrella, but he wasn't holding it over himself. He was holding it over Maya. Maya looked small next to the massive landing gear, but her posture was unyielding. She watched Linda descend with an expression that wasn't anger. It was clarity. She was seeing Linda not as an authority figure, but as a symptom of a disease she had dealt with her entire life. When Claiborne reached the bottom, he immediately went on the offensive. He marched up to Adrian, stopping just outside the umbrella's protection. "Sterling," Claiborne shouted over the rain, "I assume you are the owner of this obstruction. Do you realize you are interfering with a federal official? I have a diplomatic summit." Adrian didn't even blink. He looked at the senator's wet shoes, then up to his face. "And my daughter had a board meeting. But I suppose her time is less valuable because she doesn't have a taxpayer-funded pin on her lapel." "It was a seating error," Claiborne spat. "A computer glitch. The stewardess explained it." Adrian turned his gaze to Linda. She was standing a few feet away, hugging herself, water dripping from her nose. She looked small and pathetic. "Was it?" Adrian asked softly. "Was it a computer glitch, Ms. Halloway?" Linda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at Maya. Maya was watching her, waiting. "Tell him," Maya said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the rain. "Tell him what you told me. Tell him I didn't belong in first class. Tell him you thought I stole the ticket." Linda began to cry. It was an ugly, gasping sound. I thought... You thought a young black girl in a hoodie couldn't possibly be a global elite member." Adrian finished for her. His voice remained calm, which made it terrifying. "You looked at my daughter who graduates from MIT next month, who manages a philanthropic portfolio larger than this airline's annual operating budget, and you saw a trespasser." "I was trying to protect the senator's comfort," Linda sobbed. "You weren't protecting me," Claiborne interrupted, sensing the ship was sinking and trying to jump off. "She told me the seat was double booked. I had no idea who the girl was." Adrian turned on Claiborne, and for the first time his composure cracked. A flash of pure, molten rage ignited in his eyes. "That is the problem, Senator," Adrian snarled, stepping forward so fast Claiborne flinched back. "You didn't know who she was? If you knew she was a Sterling, you would have offered her your own seat. You would have fetched her water. You only treat people with dignity when you think they have power." Adrian gestured to the massive 777 looming above them. "You think power is a title or a seat in 1A, Adrian said. "But power is owning the engine that keeps this plane in the sky. Power is owning the debt that keeps this airline solvent. And right now, Senator, you are standing on my tarmac in the rain, explaining why I shouldn't foreclose on this entire fleet by lunchtime." The wind howling across taxiway Bravo had turned vicious. It didn't just blow. It bit, driving sheets of freezing rain sideways against the aluminum hull of the stranded Boeing 707. The tarmac, usually a place of deafening noise and movement, had fallen into a heavy, suffocating stillness that felt almost religious. Above them, the rows of porthole windows on the commercial airliner were filled with faces. Hundreds of passengers were pressed against the glass, their phones recording the scene below. To them, it was a spectacle. To the 4 people standing in the rain, near the landing gear of the obsidian-black Gulf Stream, it was an execution. Senator Claiborne was shivering violently now. The adrenaline that had fueled his earlier outrage was being rapidly replaced by the bone-deep cold of the Atlantic storm. His bespoke Italian wool suit, worth thousands, hung on him like a wet rag. Dark patches of water ruining the silk lining. Beside him, Linda Halloway stood with her arms wrapped tight around her chest. Her mascara had begun to run, tracking black tears down a face that had gone the color of old parchment. They were waiting. A black sedan lights flashing urgently tore across the wet pavement, ignoring the standard speed limits of the apron. It screeched to a halt 10 yards away, tires kicking up a spray of water. The airport operations director scrambled out, shielding his head with a clipboard. He looked terrified. In his other hand, he held a satellite phone that was blinking with a priority line indicator. He didn't run to the senator. He didn't run to the pilot. He ran straight to Adrian Sterling. "Mr. Sterling!" the director shouted over the wind, breathless and pale. "Sir, please, I have Richard Vance on the line, the CEO. He says it's critical." Adrian didn't move to take the phone immediately. He stood like a statue carved from basalt, his eyes fixed on the logo of the airline painted on the side of the 777. He let the director stand there, in the rain, arm extended for 5 long seconds, a power move that sucked the air out of the moment. Finally, Adrian reached out. He took the device. He didn't put it to his ear. He pressed the speaker button and held it up chest high like a judge holding a gavel. "This is Adrian Sterling," he said. His voice was low baritone and terrifyingly calm. It cut through the sound of the rain with no effort at all. "Adrian." The voice that crackled from the speaker was desperate, laced with the static of a connection spanning thousands of miles. It was Richard Vance, a man usually known for his ruthlessness in boardrooms, now sounding like a man pleading for his life. "Adrian, my God, I am so sorry. I was just pulled out of a shareholder meeting. I had no idea Maya was on flight 109. We are issuing a full refund immediately. I'm authorizing a private charter for her. Anything you want. Please, Adrian, you have to move the jet. Adrian listened, his expression unchanging. He looked at Linda, who flinched under his gaze. You think this is about a refund, Richard? Adrian asked softly. You think I blocked a runway at JFK because I wanted my money back? I know it's not the money, Vance stammered. It's the principle. We messed up. But the markets, Adrian. The news is already out. CNBC is running a banner headline. Sterling blockade. Our stock has dropped 12% in 20 minutes. The board is screaming. If you foreclose on the leasing agreement for the fleet, we go into Chapter 11 by morning. That sounds like a management problem, Adrian said. Specifically, a personnel management problem. We will fix it, Vance promised, his voice cracking. Heads will roll, I promise you. Good, Adrian said, because I have the two people responsible for bankrupting your airline standing right in front of me. Senator Claiborne stepped forward, sensing an opening. He straightened his wet tie, trying to summon the ghost of his political authority. Richard, is that you, thank God? Adrian didn't pull the phone away. He allowed the senator to speak into the void. Richard, you need to talk sense into this lunatic. Claiborne shouted at the device, his voice rising in pitch. He is holding a United States senator hostage on a taxiway. I have a diplomatic summit in London. He has endangered a federal official. I want this man arrested and I want this plane moving now. There was a silence on the line. It was long and heavy. When Vance spoke again, his tone had changed completely. The desperation was gone, replaced by a cold corporate finality. Senator Claiborne, Vance asked. Yes. Finally, someone with sanity. Claiborne exhaled, looking triumphantly at Adrian. Senator Vance said, I have just received the preliminary incident report from the cockpit voice recorder and the gate agent's logs. You initiated a disturbance on a fully boarded aircraft. You demanded the removal of a quiet paying passenger because your television screen wasn't working. I did no such thing, Claiborne sputtered, his face flushing red. It was a seating error, the stewardess said. You harassed a board member's daughter. Vance cut him off, his voice sharpening like a blade. And because of your entitlement, my airline is currently bleeding $4 million an hour. You are a liability, Senator. Claiborne froze. Excuse me, I am a Platinum Key member. I vote on your subsidies. Not anymore, Vance said. As of this moment, your status with Dynasty Airlines is revoked, permanently. You are banned from all Dynasty flights, domestic and international. We will not be transporting you to London. We will not be transporting you anywhere. Effectively, immediately, you are trespassing on airline property. Claiborne's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. The rain plastered his hair to his skull. You can't do that. I have a meeting with the G7 finance ministers. You'll have to swim, Vance said. Adrian took the phone back, moving it slightly closer to himself. He's finished, Richard. Now, the purser, Linda Halloway. Linda let out a small, strangled whimper. She looked up at Adrian, her eyes pleading. She wanted to speak, to explain about the stress, the long hours, the pressure to please VIPs, but the words died in her throat. She looked at Maya, who was standing quietly under the umbrella her father held. Maya wasn't looking at Linda with anger. She was looking at her with a profound, crushing disappointment. I'm here, Mr. Sterling, Vance said, his voice weary. Is she there? She is, Adrian said. Put her on. Linda stepped forward, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. She leaned toward the phone in Adrian's hand. Mr. Vance, sir. Linda, Vance said. He didn't yell. He sounded tired. You have been with us for 25 years. Yes, sir, she whispered, hope flickering. 25 years. I have a perfect record. And in 25 years, Vance continued, you never learned the most basic rule of hospitality. You judged a book by its cover. You looked at a young black girl and decided she didn't belong in your world. And because of that prejudice, you have destroyed the reputation of this company. I was trying to solve a problem, Linda sobbed, the dam finally breaking. The senator insisted I thought she was just— You thought she was nobody, Adrian interrupted. That is the sin, Ms. Holloway, not the mistake, the assumption. Linda, Vance said, the finality in his voice striking like a hammer. You are relieved of duty. Your employment is terminated for cause effective immediately. Do not step back onto that aircraft. Hand your badge to the captain. No. Linda gasped, reaching out as if to grab the phone. Please, I have a pension. I'm 2 years away from retirement. You should have thought about that before you threatened a teenager with arrest, Vance said. Adrian hung up the phone. The click echoed in the silence. The connection was severed. The judgment was complete. The rain seemed to fall harder now, drumming against the tarmac. The senator stared at his wet shoes, stripped of his power, his status, and his ride. Linda stood with her hands over her mouth, her body racking with silent sobs, her career dissolving into the grey mist. Maya moved then. She stepped out from under the protection of her father's umbrella. The rain immediately soaked her hoodie, but she didn't seem to notice. She walked slowly toward Linda. Linda flinched, expecting a verbal lashing. She expected the girl to scream, to gloat, to tell her, I told you so. But Maya stopped a foot away. She reached into the pocket of her cargo pants. Her hand came out, holding a small, crumpled square of white paper. It was a cocktail napkin. The edges were frayed, and it was damp from the rain. It was the napkin Linda had placed under Maya's sparkling water an hour ago, back when Maya was just a problem to be solved. Maya held it out. Linda looked at it. Printed in gold cursive on the damp paper was the airline's premium slogan, Excellence in every seat. You know, Maya said. Her voice was soft, devoid of malice, which made it hit harder than any shout could. When you came over to me, I was going to move. If you had asked me nicely, if you had said, we have a situation, could you help us out? I would have taken the downgrade. I don't care about the champagne. I don't care about the legroom. Linda looked up, tears blurring her vision. Then, why didn't you? Because you didn't ask me, Maya said, pressing the napkin into Linda's trembling hand. You told me. You looked at me, and you decided I was a liar. You decided I was stealing. You didn't see a passenger, Linda. You saw a suspect. Maya let go of the napkin. It sat in Linda's open palm, a wet, heavy symbol of her failure. I hope the senator was worth it, Maya whispered. She turned away, not waiting for an answer. She walked back to her father. I'm cold, Dad, she said simply. Let's go home. Wait. The shout came from the stairs of the 777. Captain O'Malley was standing halfway down the mobile steps, his hat in his hand, his face a mask of regret. Miss Sterling, O'Malley called out, his voice straining against the wind. Please, we can fix this. We can move the senator's bags. We can have the suite ready in 5 minutes. We need to get to London. Please come back on board. Maya stopped. She looked up at the massive white fuselage of the commercial airliner. She looked at the cockpit, where the pilots had judged her, and the cabin, where the passengers had watched her, being humiliated. She looked at O'Malley. No thank you, Captain, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden lull of the wind. I have a ride. She turned toward the Gulf Stream. The stairs of the private jet began to lower with a soft, expensive hydraulic hiss. Warm, golden light spilled out from the cabin, cutting a path through the gloom of the storm. A flight attendant in a sharp black uniform stood at the top of the stairs, smiling warmly, holding a dry towel. Adrian Sterling looked at the senator one last time. Claiborne was hugging himself, looking small and pathetic against the backdrop of the massive engines. "Good luck finding a cab, Senator," Adrian said, buttoning his suit jacket. "The service road is a 3-mile walk, and I believe the employee shuttle has already left." Adrian placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, and together they walked up the stairs of the black jet. The door of the Gulf Stream swung shut with a heavy, solid thud, sealing them inside the world of warmth and silence. The locks engaged. Outside, Linda Halloway stood alone in the rain, clutching a wet napkin that promised excellence. Watching as the engines of the black jet began to scream to life, blowing a spray of mist back onto the people who had tried to make them feel small. The karma wasn't just hitting back, it was leaving them behind. 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, the cabin of the Sterling Gulf Stream was quiet. The storm had been left far behind, replaced by the serene, endless blue of the stratosphere. Maya sat in a swivel recliner, a warm blanket draped over her legs, watching the clouds drift by. Her phone, which had been buzzing incessantly for the last hour, finally lay still on the table. "You're trending, ooh," Adrian said, walking in from the galley with 2 mugs of hot tea. He set one down in front of her. "Twitter is calling you the Rosa Parks of first class, which feels like a bit of a stretch, but the sentiment is there." Maya took the tea, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I didn't want to be a hashtag, Dad. I just wanted to get to the meeting." "You did more than that," Adrian said, sinking into the seat opposite her. "You exposed a rot." Back on the ground, the rot was being excised with surgical precision. The video taken by the passengers inside the terminal, showing the black jet blocking the massive airliner, had amassed 20 million views in 2 hours. But the real damage was the footage leaked by a passenger in row 2 of the 777. It clearly showed Senator Claiborne shouting, "Do you know who I am?" and Linda Halloway snatching Maya's bag. The fallout was nuclear. By the time the sun set over New York, Dynasty Airlines had issued a public apology, so groveling it was embarrassing. Their stock price had stabilized only after Richard Vance announced a complete overhaul of their crew training protocols, specifically targeting bias. Linda Halloway never flew again. The industry is small. Word travels, falls fast. No major carrier would touch the purser who grounded a transatlantic flight and cost an airline millions over a power trip. Last heard, she was managing a rental car counter in New Jersey, far away from the skies she used to rule with an iron fist. And Senator Claiborne. The karma hit him the hardest. He missed the G7 summit. The photo of him standing on the tarmac, soaked to the bone and screaming at a private jet, became the meme of the year. It stripped away his carefully cultivated image of statesman-like power, revealing him as a petty, entitled bully. His major donors pulled out within the week. 3 months later, he announced he would not seek re-election due to health reasons. Back on the jet, Maya took a sip of her tea. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "Linda was right about one thing." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what was that?" She said, "Seat 1A is for people with power," Maya said. She looked out the window at the curvature of the earth. She just didn't realize that real power doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs to show up. Adrian smiled, clinking his mug against hers. "To showing up." "To showing up," Maya echoed. The black jet soared onward, cutting through the sky, carrying the girl who didn't just move to economy. She moved the world. This story is a powerful reminder that prejudice is often the precursor to a downfall. Linda and the senator made a fatal error. They judged Maya's worth based on her appearance, her age, her race, and her hoodie, rather than her character or her rights. They assumed that because she was quiet, she was weak. They assumed that because she was young, she was powerless. But true power isn't about bluster titles or shouting, "Do you know who I am?" True power is knowing exactly who you are, standing your ground with dignity and having the resources to back it up when pushed too far. The Sterling blockade wasn't just about a seat. It was a message to every gatekeeper who thinks they can bully someone into submission. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding the keys to the kingdom. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel. I want to know what you think. Have you ever been judged or mistreated based on how you looked? Let me know your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story about karma hitting back. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that you should never judge a book by its cover. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.